Hello, welcome to Signal Noise. My name is Brian Lamar, co-host with Andrew DeSilla. Hello, Andrew. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Brian. It's 75 and sunny here in
Oh,
Batesville, Indiana. Finally out of that weird cold snap where it was 30 in the morning and 70 in the afternoon. So I'm happy. I took a little walk at lunchtime, enjoying the
yeah.
spring weather.
I got a fancy new haircut about an hour ago.
It looks great.
Thank you. Enjoyed the weather myself. Yeah, it's a beautiful outside. I'm not sure how we'll figure out what the temperature is in the real South here in a second. Today we have a great guest, Jase Bumgardner. He's a partner at the Link Group. Jase, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Your
Yeah,
hair
how's the
looks
weather down there?
your hair looks perfect. I'm gonna be honest.
We're gonna really build up that YouTube listenership over here today in
Yes.
this episode.
If you are not watching on YouTube and you can't see Brian's hair, you're just missing out.
I think we all have
it's
good hair
worth
today.
pausing and switching over to YouTube to get a glimpse.
Jace, how's the weather where you're at?
It's perfect. It's like 72 degrees and sunny.
Oh, it's probably better than here. It's almost too hot here.
Where
So
are
it-
you guys?
So Brian's
Um,
in Cincinnati. I'm in southeastern Indiana. So we're actually about, for those of you who don't know that and just think that I'm in Cincinnati, I'm about 50 miles away from Brian at any given time. But I live in a town of 7,000 people. So Cincinnati's my city. That's my airport. That's the nearest Target. So I end up making my way over there quite often.
But never more than 50 miles between you, right?
If we
oh,
can help it.
never. He flew to where were you? He flew to the West Coast a couple weeks ago, and it was weird.
Yeah, you could feel the difference, right?
Well,
Brian, I
maybe.
think we have a shared acquaintance. Michelle Pierce Lester told me that
Oh boy. Do
you
not
knew her
ask
before I know her, and I've known her for 25 years.
You know,
Yeah,
James, we did all this prep for the podcast, and now we get to go into the Brian MMR.
Oh no.
I am
This is
so happy.
yeah, this is your life. So yeah, I had a class. I'm a Georgia MMR, and in that same class, the class of 2000 was Tommy Galloway and Michelle Pierce Lester, and they're both really good friends of mine. We saw Tommy not too long ago, and I saw Michelle not too long ago, and they're two of my absolute favorite people in the world. And one thing I love about them is that I've known them obviously since 1999, so a little bit longer than you, not too much longer. And this will get us a bridge into the podcast. They really fit the culture that when I think of the Link Group, I think of a really cool culture and really smart people and really fun, nice, fun to work with people, and that's exactly how they are. So, good hires with them, and yeah, Michelle especially could tell some stories about me much more than I could about her, but and Tommy could as well. But yeah, absolutely mutual friend.
Yeah, Tommy's one of my guys, and Michelle's just the best. Great mind, great heart.
But yeah, I think that you two had a conversation recently. Maybe I'll let Andrew. Maybe you can set this up, the discussion for today.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a very kind of organic reach out. Jason made a post on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a permanent record, so you can go find it. Thank you, down. But it was just this little chart, and the chart was divided. It says what AI is great at and where humans are essential. We talk about artificial intelligence so much on the podcast, and we've even had Brandon Richard from the Link Group on for 2 episodes to talk very specifically about artificially intelligent research tools and the ways that the Link Group is kind of testing and deploying them and what that strategic approach looks like. But the kind of high level take of that post from someone as senior as Jason, Jason, been there more than 20 years, you're a partner. Um, I wanted to talk today about what it's like to one kind of lead with AI. And for someone who has as much experience as you do, to see kind of like your space in the industry evolve at such a rapid pace now, like what that looks like. I also know that the Link Group, you all have a seller doer model, right? And it's a lot of the partners who are interacting with your clients. And something we haven't talked about on the podcast yet is how you're bringing up artificial intelligence to your clients and when, is it kind of like only your best clients that you can say, hey, let's take a chance together? Or maybe you take a risk on a new client because you don't, it's really complicated. And I promise this isn't like a, super long open-ended thing and I have to talk for 20 minutes, but that's kind of, just setting the stage of why I had reached out was that I want to learn more about artificial intelligence and market research from this kind of higher level leadership and strategic perspective. So maybe just to kick it off, you have a storied career here at the Link Group. You've been in the research almost as long as Brian, it sounds like, which is quite a bit of
Oh,
time. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about like how you came to be at the Link Group, what your history in market research is, any specialties that you have, things like that, and then comment on what the last 2 years have been like with AI kind of coming on the scene.
So I'll do 25 years of history in about 25 seconds. It's my silver anniversary with the Link Group.
It
I
is.
grew up
congrats.
in
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So I grew up in a really small town in North Carolina. I went to Chapel Hill where I met my beautiful wife Ashley. I was pre-med for a couple years, hated it, but I'm starting to reconsider that now that I've fallen in love with the pit and me and Dr. Robbie have got a mind meld going. But I switched over and did a journalism degree, wanted to go into consulting, could not get an interview with the McKinseys and Bains of the world just because I wasn't in the business school. And so interview with a different kind of consultancy, which was the Link Group.
Oh, we'll take you.
One of our managing partners, Jim Pullen, put me through the paces, asked me how many planes are there in the sky right this second was the big question in the interview. And so worked through that with him. And there were 10 people, 10-ish people at the Link Group in those days. So we're 110 now. That's a 10 bagger. That's my entire career, seeing that rise.
Wow.
And it was just a very different company then. We kind of follow wherever the macro trends are. So at the time, it was big retail, and it was actually called Consumer Link at the time. It was all consumer-based clients, and so Coke was a big client, a lot of CPG clients, and then the tech boom really sucked in a lot of the money, and so we chased that into tech, and my big clients were like HP and IBM and a lot of the big names. And then healthcare kind of became dominant in the economy. And we had a couple clients leave IBM, go over to Eli Lilly and a couple other big pharmas and took us with them. And so now we're very heavy healthcare. And so I led projects, moderated, did qual and quant for 20 plus years. Now I primarily do what we call a strategist role. So large work streams that follow a product from just idea all the way through launch. And so it tends to be long-term relationships. And so sometimes we work in two-person teams. I tend to be on projects that are more like 3 or 4 person teams, bigger projects, longer relationships. I probably touch maybe 40 projects a year, do a lot of business development. I know you guys do a lot of that too. And then the spaces, it's healthcare. I primarily specialize in neuroscience and new product planning. So I've spent most of the past decade with Eli Lilly on their ride to the top of the pharma space. So that's been a fun thing to do. When it comes to AI, so I knew you were going to ask me this, and so I figured I better get a finger on the pulse of what was going on in the industry. I think I'm very different than you guys in that I have a very narrow view of the industry. So don't go to conferences, although we're getting ready to start going to conferences. Don't read the trades, although read the grit report this morning to get ready. And primarily work in one sector in healthcare, primarily work with one client, Lilly. And primarily just do one role, which is strategy role. So I'm hoping to get a little bit of perspective from you guys as well. But that being said, when it comes to I think I see the industry as having changed less than all the incoming that I get from everyone else. So I see the industry as maybe having changed to 15%, something like that, 10 to 15% in our world with AI. I think it's still by and large a talent and relationship and human thinking through problems and putting together puzzles game. So still mostly human directed everything with some shiny new toys. Many, if not most of our projects do have some kind of overt AI component, many of our sales calls or pitches do incorporate some kind of AI something in there, but it's primarily, at least on the projects that I work on and the business that I pitch, it's just amplifying the thinking and the execution of what our people are already doing. It hasn't substituted a lot I think of us at the higher end of the range. I think if you're just passing through data and it's just got to be fast. Like I think a lot of those firms are getting disintermediated to a large degree, but I see it as like a 10 to 15% shift. But how does that square with what you all see?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on the money where there's a lot more hype around what AI can do versus what AI can actually do. And I think that you're right to point out a news article from Anthropic or from uh any news outlet really that's talking about how AI is going to disrupt jobs and so on and so forth. It doesn't reflect my experience on the ground very much at all. Very little has been fully automated or replaced, right? There are really powerful tools that, as you described, like people are using that maybe you can do something more quickly. Maybe you can iterate more times in the same amount of time. But that kind of like augmentation versus automation or the augmentation versus replacement dynamic that you're discussing here, I think that definitely does reflect in what I'm seeing. And it's interesting too, as you point out that your role is largely strategy, right? And that is a role that, you know, that wasn't your first role at the Link Group, right? You had to kind of earn the chops and earn the authority, credibility to have that role. The things that I use today to automate with artificial intelligence are the really dumb things that just kind of waste my time anyway. Artificial intelligence has not come in and it makes me faster, it makes me sharper. Maybe I'm having an off day because I didn't get good sleep last night and it'll help me, limp along or something like that. But the really good work that I do every day, I have not personally replaced that with artificial intelligence yet, uh, at all. Brian, what do you think?
Well, I'm fascinated by his answer, first of all, because Eli Lilly is very public with what they're investing in artificial intelligence, right? And they're kind of I think someone labeled them as the number one AI ready pharma company in the world. And they're doing it with drug discovery and devices and all kinds of interesting things. But at the end of the day, we're researchers and insights consultants. And so I love his answer. I think that you and we've talked about this on the podcast, we kind of get in this spiral of, oh my gosh, our jobs are going to go away, and I have to make myself indispensable, and I've got to learn all new skills, and and we have a synthetic partnership building synthetic sample with Qualtrics Edge, and that is part of it from my perspective is I need to learn that and be an expert in it and consult companies like yours and its use cases. So I think that while you may think that I don't go to conferences and I don't even read all the trades and I only have one client, I might be a different level of bias in that I'm looking for the AI, right? I'm seeking out the AI. So my lens is really AI focused, possibly biased in that I'm not looking at the overall landscape as much. I'm intentionally biasing myself looking at AI. So I'm glad to have this conversation. And our conferences, if you went to a conference, that's all they talk about is AI. And so you might have that bias perception as well. And so that's a long way of saying that I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer that question. Because, most of our podcasts are about AI and a lot of our conversations are about AI. When we talk to clients, it's a lot of times it's what they want to talk about. So I'm fascinated by your perspective as someone that it's only changed 10 to 15%. I have a feeling you're more right than we are. Not we, but like the AI doomsayers are.
I don't think we're doomsayers, but
Right. Yeah.
I do think it's the right conversation to be having. So I think I'm not surprised that the conferences and just the scuttlebutt and the hearsay are fixated on it. And I think it's great to have this year, last year, next year, your podcast like heavily focused on it. Because I do think if anything's going to be like the disruptor, that's what it is.
Right.
I'm always just trying to inject a little realism and
Mhm.
pragmatism into the folks who come back and say, it was all AI all the time, and it's coming, and we gotta be ready, or this could put us out of business. And so I'm of the opinion of whatever works. If that's what people want, and it does prove to be badass, and we can adopt it and teach it and make money off of it, then let's do it. If it goes from 90-10 to 50-50, and we can preserve our model and our culture and put elite product out and use these tools to make our lives easier and faster and be smarter, let's do it. But I'm not just going to do it to do it, right? It actually has to have big time benefit. And I think we're just in this phase right now. We have been for the past couple of years where clients are just pushing so hard for it. And it's because their bosses are pushing them for it. And there's almost like this any benefit mindset. Like if it does anything good, if it does anything better, then we should be using it, and not so much a net benefit mindset. Like I see all these studies that say people think they're getting faster, but they're getting slower. They think it took them 20% less time to do the project, but it took them 20% more time to do the project because of the time to learn the skills, the new
Yeah.
tools. There's like some disorientation there where you think things are going faster, but you're having to redo work and task switch a lot and things like that. So if it actually saves money and people like it and it puts out better product, let's do it. But if it doesn't, then I think we're in that phase right now where we're trying to work through it. And people, I'm starting to hear, like in that report I read this morning, 13% of brand side clients are satisfied with generative AI right now. Like, I know numbers, you guys know numbers. That's a bad number,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You don't see numbers that low in anything.
Right. It's a benchmark. Next year, only 30% will be raving about it, right? Like, oh, this is great. That's now it's 30%, when that's also a bad number.
And I think Gallup put out so living out of market research, I think Gallup put a number out a week or two ago comparing just general public's perception of AI and comparing it with it was lower than politicians. It was lower than ICE.
Wow.
There were 5 times more people freaked out by it than excited by it. So I'm just trying to keep us balanced here. So pragmatism, it works. If it's awesome, let's do it. Let's figure out a way to make money at it. Let's put elite product out that uses it, harness the advantages. But there's a window of time where you do it just to do it. And so I kind of think we're running up on that. We're starting to see some people pull back. Clients aren't asking for it quite as much. I think the pace of innovation has slowed down a little bit. Like the tools are getting a little bit better, but when's the last time something's come out that's entirely new to world? That's probably been at least a year or so. So yeah, I'm ready, but wait and see for now.
I wonder, and I rather if you talk more in general here, because I don't want you to violate any confidences that you have.
Sure.
But from more of a company perspective, do you feel that your clients are pressuring you to invest in AI, or new techniques, or to be more efficient leveraging AI, or asking what you're doing with AI? Or is there, when you say there's 10 to 50% change, is that what you mean? Just a tiny bit, a little bit more efficiencies here and there, or
For a while, the pressure was persistent, and I would
yeah,
get a call from a client and say, some of your competitors are really going all in on this, and they're getting
yeah,
out in front, and they're using it as the deliverable. So, client comes to us and they say, we want to know what it's like to live with some disease. And so, I think in the peak AI moment, it was all that's out there. You just got to go grab it. It's on
yeah,
social media. And so somebody can press a button somewhere and drop all those insights into a template and do a little quali quant and charge an arm and a leg for it. Why can't you do that? And so it feels like that particular moment has passed and that the pressure isn't so steep, but I do still think most of our clients are eagerly looking through our proposal to see ways that we are smartly using AI, if not for the whole product. And so that's essentially what we are doing. We are saying, let's chop it up into three parts, which is I'm writing this white paper that we're going to put out in a few weeks and I can send you guys. But a lot of the thinking behind that initial graphic that Andrew saw that got us to here was from that. But it's the discovery phase, the field work phase, and then the impact phase. And so we're just trying to look at it in each of those three phases and say, okay, this project with these specific opportunities and constraints, every project's unique with this budget and this timeline and this client's familiarity and eagerness around AI. I don't know, there's maybe 4 or 5 opportunities within each of those 3 phases, and so which ones are we gonna suggest, highly recommend, put into the price of this proposal, and then be able to come in and be persuasive about why we think it's a good idea. So, I would say it's a subtle sell, and their
Mhm.
pressure has become a little bit more subtle, and I think maybe we're kinda meeting in the middle now.
Yeah,
But I think it
I
can make tons of sense, right? Particularly in the upfront parts of the project. What we're starting to consolidate around is there's probably more application earlier on in the project when we're getting up to speed and we want to hit the ground running. We want the clients to feel like we know all the projects that they've done before so that we're not just out rediscovering things that they've already discovered. Let's go out and do true discovery. So we're synthesizing all the reams of data that they have. We're triangulating it with market real-time information, just using frontier models and using like Notebook LM and synthesis tools and things like that, using AI conversational surveys to get all the stakeholders involved to try to align on what's really going to be the crux of the project, really honing the question up front with teamwork. So we see like huge value there, and you can apply that in almost every project. Once you get into field work, it's a little bit more of a coin flip. It's AI moderating is like a really good example. We refuse to call it moderating. We call it AI conversational surveys because we like to think of moderating as having a little bit more depth
Yeah,
than maybe
human
what you
element
can
to
do with that.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're into field work. Is that apropos for this project? Like if we need to take 100 ideas down to 3 to be able to go out and blow it out and do human interviewing, that makes all kinds of sense. If somebody comes and they've already got it down to 3, then probably less sense, unless we want to go back out on the back end and take whatever we learn with the human moderating and scale it up and extend it and get some bigger base sizes and numbers, then maybe it makes sense again. And then on through to the impact part, we still feel like that's primarily like there's great high powered analytics tools in the impact phase of the project, but by and large, once you move beyond that, it's still mostly a human endeavor to truly find the leading edge insights, to package it, put it in a strategic framework, use it to sell leadership and get them on board. Like we're trying to find ways to use it, but we still think that's primarily a human based part of the project.
That's a really fascinating way to look at it. And I think that in context, first of all, I think it's the right approach, but it's useful framing for where I think those who are aggressive adopters are right now, in that I think we're in the phase of relearning what AI is not good at because we're bombarded with every day. AI can do this now, you know, OpenAI just destroyed this industry, and uh, AI can do my whole presentation in one prompt. And like, it'll make one, but can it do it well? And I've personally been going down a rabbit hole of these things called Nathan networks, and they're it's just a software that allows you to plug and play different like programmatic tasks. And the thing that's been like a shift for me is that you have to choose when you're actually going to use an AI or not. And so if you wanted to do math, you should just code the math. If you need to make a single decision, you use a little, coding tool that kind of does those things. And then if it needs to think, only then do you plug in the LLM. And in the same way, asking an LLM to one shot your whole research project today with things like Perplexity Computer and Claude Cowork and OpenClaw and all these other tools that are agentic and can complete long tasks, it'll do it. But I can't even get Claude or Perplexity to manage my email well off of one prompt. I had to build a whole network to do it. And so I think that like pinpointing exactly where to use it in the process and the way that you outline that in your three sectors and these particular tasks, right? That's exactly the right approach. We may get to a point in 5 years where that's not the case, but as of today, and Brian, you please chime in. I feel like I'm using AI more effectively by figuring out where not to use it, which also makes it clearer exactly where to use it. Because if you just try to use it for everything, you're going to end up spending more time experimenting than you would have spent just doing the job, like you said, Jace. And you're gonna get a crappier end result too. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah,
Or Jace, yeah.
yeah, AGI is when it can empty your inbox. That's
Yeah.
I firmly believe that, right? When it can get to the bottom of inbox 0 for the day. But to me, it's just an unrealistic expectation. In order to do that, it has to understand all of your priorities. It has to understand how you think about your relationships with each of the people who are sending you emails. It has to know the sequencing of events that you want to happen during the day, because every time you send an email, it's going to trigger another email, and then that leads to some cascade. If you don't word things exactly right in an email, you can get into trouble. And so now it's just going to be drafting the emails and we're editing, but we're going to miss some things because we didn't think through it. I mean, there's just 100 little cognitive tricks that we do during the course of the day in deciding how we're going to manage our inbox. Maybe one day it gets there, man. I don't know. That would be amazing, but I would be surprised. I I think sometimes about, like, so hallucination is like a well-known problem, almost to the point now to where it's just cliche. There's a really tight tolerance for error in our line of work. So if you're in a meeting and you start saying stuff that's not true, or you start using bad logic or
Mhm.
bad references, and you just try to blame AI, you're gonna get torn up. I don't see how saying AI did it absolves you of any
No.
right? So that's 100 times a day in every email is applying that level
Mhm.
of sensitivity and feel and background knowledge and forecasting knowledge and all that. And it's word choice, and it's just I don't know. I would love for it to be able to do that for you, Andrew. I think putting different things into folders is about as far as we're gonna get for now.
Yep. And that's what it does for me right now. And it's just my personal email. And it took me 20 hours to build. So the people who are kind of saying, like it can do all these things out of the box, it's not well.
I think you gotta be so I probably sound a little bit more like a skeptic than I'm intending to, because I think you have to meet the moment. And the moment, at least for the past few years, has been fierce enthusiasm, if not trepidation, about the technology. And walking into a room and saying, I don't know about AI, that didn't work. Like, it's going
Right.
to be a short meeting. So you've got to project the right amount of confidence in harnessing the power. Lord knows it has an infinite amount of. And you have to be open to just about any future, like anybody who comes in and they say they know that it's going to be a bust or they know that it's going to take over, I stop listening to just because they've either got an agenda or they're not thinking about it clearly. So you got to apply like a very specific kind of humility to it to say, I don't know, you don't know. Between the two of us, we probably know 1% of all there is to know. And so you got to like put a foot in to show that you're willing to give it the old college try just like everybody else wants to. But then you also can't give the store away. You can't say, well, there's not that much value in our talent and our human capital anymore because that's going to lead to a really bad spot. So it's a pickle. Like you must meet the demand of the moment. You got to talk the talk. You can't seem like a negative Nancy Luddite or you're going to get in trouble.
Mhm.
But I just think hubris gets you into trouble here. Nobody knows. We anticipate the trends as best we can, adapt as quickly as we can, and then we've got 700 proposals a year. We probably win 80% of them once you back out, like the ones that aren't real. So I'll see it early if it trends one way or another, and we'll just adapt accordingly. I think that's about the best we can do.
Yeah, and I think we'll shift you from you're not an AI skeptic, you're an AI realist, I think, because
Yeah.
you know, I thought to myself when you were describing the care with which you were implementing it into the research process and all the different steps where you were, you may actually be quite further ahead of others than you think, as far as the
Yeah.
usage of AI tools in research.
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
like I should probably step back for a second. So we decided a few years ago to make it a priority. So the company's run by 10 partners. And so we set our initiatives and our priorities at a retreat every year. And so we consider ourselves fast followers in this space. Like we're not going to be the first to adopt it, but we're not going to just be mainstream either. So if there's a lot of value in it and clients really want it, then we're going to pick it up pretty quick. So we decided to make it a priority several years ago. I heard the conversation I had with Brandon. Brandon led that up. He was the head of our task force for that. We strategically integrated it as a priority into our 5-year goals. And so the the vision came first. We align the vision as we do with anything with our overall mission and our pillars, our values to make sure that the vision was in service of the mission, not the other way around. And then the task force set about scouring everything, everywhere, vet it, select the best partners, share it with the organization, train them up, and then repeat. And so every proposal we write is a tailor made custom proposal. We don't put anything into a black box. And we just try to keep constant tabs on it with little sentiment checks to see, are we hitting the mark? Are we winning the proposals at the highest rate that we can? Do we need to update anything? And so I think it's working so far. I think the conversation we just been having up until now is that the way it's going to keep going? Are we in kind of a lull and it's going to ramp up again as capabilities of the frontier models ramp up again? Or are we kind of hitting a crescendo? I don't know.
And I think you're right. We don't know. And all we can do is to continue to experiment with the new stuff when it comes out and use it as wisely as we possibly can.
Sometimes I feel like it's deja vu. Like clients wanting creative, innovative methods is nothing new. We've been hearing that every day for 25 years.
Right.
And I think everybody gets a little bit frustrated with the notion that if you want to know what somebody wants or you want to know what somebody thinks, Socrates had a pretty good beat on it. Right? You ask them. You have a quality conversation with an expert moderator or a beautifully crafted, intelligent survey, and you win on talent. You win on operations. And I think when people aren't getting what they want, when vendors on our side of the fence aren't getting what they want, it's a defense mechanism, right? You got to pivot to something else.
Mm.
You gotta, 5 years ago it was, or 10 years ago, it was behavioral economics. People would say, well, you can't trust what the customer says. They're irrational and illogical, and 90% of the thinking is non conscious. And so we got to put them on the couch and turn the lights down and do a 17-part projective exercise and go back to their childhood and figure out how to ladder them up Maslow's this and this and that. It's because they didn't have the book they wanted. So
Right.
Right.
that's what they had to do. But I mean, we do it too. It's fine. It's helpful. It scratches an itch. Let's do something a little different on this project. But at the end of the day, I still think that putting an elite moderator in a chair, looking at someone across the table and having a quality conversation with them to solve the problem, to put the puzzle together. I mean, you guys have done these AI moderated conversations. We gotta get serious. We're not those two things aren't the same thing,
They're not the same.
Right.
No.
right?
Yeah, there's actually I'm not sure if you saw the news article the Anthropic posted that they had done the largest qualitative research project ever, 81,000 respondents. There was I think 50 different researchers wrote in to and I'm going to get it wrong now, but it's the governing body of marketing research in the UK to issue a definition of what qualitative research is, because they do not believe that that is at all what happened there. And when you actually go in and look at the report, it was indeed not what any of us would call qualitative research. So I couldn't agree with you more that those two things are not the same thing at all. Would you use AI though to re-answer the question, how many planes are in the sky? No.
Now, what's the fun in that?
Right. That's not the point of the question.
Yeah, I mean, when we have that conversation, again, it seems like I'm more skeptical than I really am. If the project calls for 1,000 quali quant completes in 17 different countries by next week, then I know what tool to use. Absolutely, I'm going to call Listen or I'm going to call Conveo, and we'll get it done. Because sometimes speed is the primary marker, or sometimes cost or sample size or rigor. Like sometimes that's what the situation calls for, in which case let's do it. But we've got elite moderators and they're sitting across the table from a crying respondent, getting them to open up and be reflective, managing 17 pieces of stimulus and 6 client chats on the screen and force to tech pinging them, while in the back of their mind designing the exact right sequence of questions to ask to get to the answer. I mean, it's a ridiculous skill. It's unfair to even ask a chatbot to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, I think about like going out on a date. You're having a real conversation, looking at each other in the eyes, tone, body language, eating a real steak, drinking a real cocktail, or you can go on a pretend date with a chatbot. I went on a date. No, you didn't. It has its place if you're bored and you don't have anything to do.
Right.
I think there are probably more people doing that than we would be comfortable with, but
I have two questions. One's not AI, another one's more personal. So taking us away from AI, you said something in the very beginning of the interview that I really kind of focused on, was that, and I think I remember this right. You said that you were a strategist that works from like idea to launch. Is that what you said? Something like that?
Uh-huh.
Okay. As a researcher, I don't think most researchers are that fortunate that can be a researcher with the same client from idea to launch. I think that's really cool. So I'm wondering, number one, do you realize that you're on the fortunate end of the research spectrum, that you actually get to do that? And you also get to see validation of the research that you proposed, right? And that's kind of fascinating to me too. When I supported a major CPG firm here locally, sometimes I'd work on research. 7 years later, I'm on 12 clients later, I see something hit the shelf. I'm like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. I had a hand in that, but it looks nothing like, we did the research in. And also, this is kind of a run-on question. Does that come with like increased expectations that you were involved at the idea phase? Now you can validate it to some extent based upon all the consulting and strategy that you were involved in.
Yes, that's a great question. You should be a moderator.
I'm not an AI moderator. Yeah, AI couldn't do that. especially that in so many words.
The first question, I do feel very fortunate to have that be the role. It it makes the job so much more interesting and fun to be able to chase it so long and to just build and build and build your working knowledge of whatever it is that you're working on. So one of the main things that I do when I train people is I try to show them how it can be a really fun job if you approach it in the right manner.
Mhm.
And so one of the just tried and true best ways to make it a fun job is to know exactly what you're talking about on the content, whatever it is. And so a lot of times the researchers are hired guns, they come in, it's the clients that know the information best, and they do. It's their product, their company. But if you can upskill to proficiency in healthcare, it's reading journal articles, it's just knowing the disease state left and right. If you can have that kind of proficiency, then you feel so much more confident in the discussions with the teams, with the doctors, with the patients. And when you then get to do that on repeat projects with the same work stream all the way through when it was a molecule being considered, all the way up through when the FDA approves and it gets launched, then it just gets more and more fun along the way. You're just learning more and more. You feel better and better about your core conclusions. You're updating your priors. And so we think that's why one of the reasons why we've been so successful is because in that way we're similar to like a management consultancy that embeds with your shop.
Mhm.
We're just not with you, but we're with you over and over and over in spirit. And so I love that about it. A lot of times we're with whatever the brand is longer than the team is with the brand
Right.
because those guys are switching out left and right a lot of times.
You're the cohesion. Yeah.
Yes. So they'll say, "Hey, have we ever done anything like this before?" And you'll say, "Yeah, 3 years ago we did this project. We already know this. Let's do something else." Uh, AI is getting better, and I'm glad for them that they can now plop all their decks into a synthesis tool and query it to see that they've already done it. But for a long time, it was one of our big roles to be able to do that. So yeah, I think that's where we base a lot of our value
Yeah.
is being able to grow throughout the work stream. And it's not just the knowledge, it's the relationships. Like at the end of the day, this is a talent and relationship game. And so how we recruit, who we hire, how we train them, how we apprentice them, what their continuing education looks like, what their development, the points of emphasis, how they're managed, like all that into creating an elite market researcher is 70% of the game. But then market research is just famously a relationship organic game. And so being with the product so long I mean, I some of my good friends are my clients. So
Mhm.
makes it harder to say no to each other.
Well, that kind of leads to my other question is the relationship game. And I'm kind of fascinated by your LinkedIn profile in that you're very unique in how you positioning sounds more too strategic, how you describe yourself maybe, and like your skills, kindness and integrity first, comfort and complexity. And you see even say, I think Zen on the outside, fierce competitor on the inside. I think it's really fascinating to me and it's unique. And certainly, and there's much more to it. I recommend adding him to your LinkedIn because it's really fascinating, like how you talk and think about this. So Link Group is fortunate to have you. The industry is fortunate to have you. I think that's really cool and lends itself to building stronger relationships. That just to how you kind of think. It's not really a question; it's more of a compliment, I think. So it's really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was trying to just do something a little different there. How do
Okay.
you how do you get across like a ton of information without writing paragraphs?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's very short, very genuine in it as well. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
And you know what? That's not how AI would have written it. So
Oh my God, no.
there you go.
Well, I think the further we get away from writing things for ourselves, just to go on a little tangent here, writing is the synthesis in my mind, of knowledge. And so AI is just like the latest heavyweight entrant into disrupting thinking. And so if we're not reading like we used to, and we're not writing like we used to, then I don't know where those thinking skills are going to come from. And so what I'm trying to do with my people is like, let's turn the use of AI into a straight up art form. And so you got to have like a sensitive tip of the finger touch. When somebody asks you a question, are you going to AI it or are you going to think it?
Yep.
And if you get to the point where your immediate always reflex reaction is I'm going to AI that, you're in trouble because you're going to lose that skill. And I don't see a future 5 years from now where people being smart isn't a tier 1 skill. I think if anything, it's going to get more and more and more important.
Yeah.
But you also have to be able to use all the tools really well to make your day smoother, to make it faster, to extract information on things where you can't think your way to it. And so there's a zillion permutations where it is useful and you should default to it. You just don't want to do it at the expense of your thinking skills. Because I think that, the great de-skilling has already begun, where people are farming out the thinking and the writing and sometimes even the talking to these tools. I'm in meetings every day where a leader asks somebody a question and they wobble because you can tell they want to AI it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to work.
Right.
I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Not anytime soon.
Yeah, until the boss is just an AI talking to the other AI. Well, Jase, thank you so much for joining us and for all the time. Really interesting perspective. And I really appreciate, like Brian, you said it before, that we tend to have a very almost like, yes, aggressive adoption, yes, quote unquote bleeding edge, but we have like a very like frantic view.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
And so I just really enjoyed having this realistic conversation with you, Jase, and discussing the like philosophically correct application of these tools. Your organization has certainly made it a priority, and so I think that it's not caution, the care with which you are approaching artificial intelligence is really cool to bring onto the podcast and to talk about and hear about. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was really nice to meet you. I do think that's the right distillation of where we are at the end of the day. I think we want to squeeze every last drop out of it that's valuable.
Yeah.
And the conclusion of this white paper that we're writing is we're looking for the ideal amount of friction. And so much of the value in elite market research still comes from the magic of the human-led process. But there's so much power in the AI tools that we also want to harness and we also want to wring out of it. So we're finding our way like everybody else. I'm trying to figure out what the right blend is on any given project and stay on top of it like you guys. So appreciate what y'all do with your podcast. I think it's great.
Thank you. Well, I'll add that management consulting's loss is our industry's gain, and that's one of the advantages of our industry, I think, and something I hadn't really thought about is the diversity, that we're not just hiring people from business school that have a marketing research background. There's a few people out there like myself that have that. We're hiring people from very diverse backgrounds, like you two particularly.
Yeah.
That probably management consulting is not going to take an interview from either of you two, and we're fortunate to have you all in our industry because different background, different way of thinking, and so that's amazing. So really appreciate you coming on. This was great.
Enjoyed it, guys.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening.
See ya.